Hi, welcome to Product Mastery Now, where we simplify the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery. These are the product management practices that you need really to improve your career and gain more influence. To see all 7, simply go to productmasterynow.com. I'm Chad McAllister, a product management professor, practitioner, and your host. And today we're talking about navigating personal change as a product manager. And from this discussion, you'll have some insights about what you might do if you find yourself unexpectedly laid off from your organization and how to look and create new opportunities. Joining us is Tom Leung. He talked with us back in episode 390 about experiences that help product managers grow. And at that time, he was the director of product management at Google Health. And we'll find out more about what he's learned about growth as a product manager, including through challenging changes that we all encounter at times. First, we do create a written detailed summary of everything we discuss, including a 1-page action guide to help you put into action the key takeaways from our discussion. You'll find those resources at productmasterynow.com/496. And also, I'm able to fund this podcast through the training courses that I provide. I provide those for product managers and leaders, and they come in 3 areas. One is for product managers and leaders to really level up their knowledge of what they need to know to be successful. The second one is for people moving into leading innovation in their organizations. And the third one is for senior leaders to understand what they need to know about leading innovation and why leading product innovation is different than other experiences that they've had. Certainly, if you're a product professional, one of those fits your growth. And if you want to find out more about any of that, go to productmasterynow.com. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chad. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, so glad to talk with you. We had the opportunity to talk not too long ago as I was a guest on your podcast, which was wonderful. And just as a reminder, that's Fireside PM for people that want to check that out. And there's the YouTube version that you can find on YouTube as well. But I want to catch up with you about changes since we talked a couple years ago now when you were at Google and going through a change in career. You're no longer the director of product management. Just unravel that story a little bit for us.
Yeah, it's a wonderful kind of arc from when we last talked on your show. We were in a heavy hiring mode, and it was kind of zero interest rate kind of period enthusiasm. And then basically in January of 2023, I still remember I had a one-on-one with a skip level, and he asked me like, hey, do you think there's any risks to our headcount and funding? And I said, oh, I don't think so. Like we're playing the long game, etc. And then literally the next day, my manager asked me to have a impromptu one-on-one. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then he let me know that we're going to do some pretty significant restructuring. And I wasn't impacted, but a lot of people in our org were impacted. And for part of my job as a leader in the org was to inform many people in one-on-ones that would start, I think, in the middle of the night because we had impacted people in Europe and we had to inform them. And it was just crazy because it was a bit surreal because I joined Google in 2006 when I worked there the first time. And up until 2023, with maybe a minor exception during the financial crisis in 2008, this was a organization that was, once you're in the door, like you've made it. And it's famous for really taking great care of its employees and extraordinarily competitive compensation and benefits and all that good stuff. So the idea of hopping onto a call, a Googler to Googler call, and letting a person know that their role is being eliminated was just crazy. It was like an outer body experience, and I hope I never have to do that again. I think I've laid off people before, but I've never done it at Google. I've done it at like my startups or other companies. So that was very crazy. So beginning of 2023, I was the part of the apparatus that had to make those changes. And then I thought, okay, well, we'll make it work with the smaller team. And then I think it was like the summertime of that year, or maybe spring or something, my number came up. And that was a surprise because I was like, well, I thought we just did it all in January.
Right.
But, like you always try and have these cuts one and done, but that wasn't sort of the reality. And there's still, I was just talking to some folks yesterday who were impacted. It's just like a rolling wave of continuous restructuring. So it's a crazy time for a lot of people.
It is.
And I do want to emphasize that, especially I know being on the other side in January, that a lot of extremely high performers were let go.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, we'll take this as an opportunity to cull the herd a little bit, and people who are just kind of barely meeting expectations, like they'll be the first to go. It was done in a way where you had to restructure like entire businesses and teams, and naturally there are always extremely high performers. Sometimes most are high performers in an org, and we had to let those folks go. So that was really, really tough, but life goes on.
Yeah, it's tough to have to do that as the managers, as the leader, right? These are people we care about, that we've worked with, and we're impacting people's personal lives. And then for you to be impacted personally a few months later, right? Challenging to face that too. It's changed. I graduated from college 1987, so a bit now. And at that time, the economy seemed to be in a little bit of a lull. There were engineers that weren't that were being let go a little bit. And the general philosophy in the 80s was, yeah, we're downsizing, we're right-sizing, and we're getting rid of the people that aren't being productive. And so it was kind of a negative if you got laid off, right? It's like, you weren't one of the ones that were really helpful. But that changed. That was not true later on. The dot-com certainly made a difference because we had entire companies wiped out, and some of those were really high performers. And I went through both having to lay off some people and then seeing that in the organization, and then myself once getting laid off. It's just a numbers game, right? It's just a department needs to go, changes are being made. And in my experiences, it generally felt kind of sterile. We have to do this. There wasn't a lot of care about the people involved, frankly, and you felt kind of truly like a cog in the machine. Google has had at least I've had a different perception of Google's culture and environment. And I'm sure that was just challenging on both sides, having to lay people off and be through it yourself.
Yeah, and it was particularly hard because one of our core values is psychological safety. And the belief is that if you have really strong psychological safety in a team, you can bring out the best performance. And so the kind of layoffs, they kind of pierce the veil a little bit of that safety, because then people are like, whoa, it doesn't seem to be related to perf scores. Like, we had to lay off people who were rated in the top few percent of the whole company. So then people are like, well, shoot, like, how do I know if my number is going to come up? And so Google's a great company, continues to be an amazing company. It's not immune to the laws of physics and the economy.
And economics.
Yeah. And we overgrew during the kind of 2020 to 22 time. And I think a lot of us kind of knew it, but who's going to turn down like a massive increase in headcount for your efforts? And if they say that you can pursue 7 bets instead of 5, like, that's sure, let's go for it. So yeah, it was difficult. Although now, talking to a lot of folks who were impacted, it may come across as rationalization, but I do encounter a lot of people who seem like really grateful that this happened, not because they wanted to be laid off, but because it gave them permission to kind of pursue other things that they pretty much were golden handcuffed against doing in the past. And so, and to Google's credit, they were really, really, really generous with the severance packages. So no complaints here.
So as you have thought about that and talked with other Googlers that also got laid off, any key takeaways in terms of just kind of how you personally think about navigating that?
Yeah, my own journey was a little bit I mean, it wasn't easy to get the news that I was kind of on the list by I guess it was kind of like the middle of the year. But I actually had hit my 10th year as a Googler in 2022. And so I was already thinking about like, maybe it's time to take on a new adventure. Like, it's been a great company. I've worked on 3 groups, AdWords, YouTube, and Google Health. Grown up a lot in the company. But I thought like maybe it's time to change things up. And luckily, like kind of financially, things were looking, I accomplished a lot of goals I had set out earlier. And so for me, the timing kind of worked out really well because I was likely to make a move anyway. The exact date wasn't set, but when the kind of forces coincided, I was like, oh, well, this could work out okay. And so I think there were a lot of people who were thinking of like, maybe there is life outside of one company.
Mm-hmm.
And they just there was never the right time because basically you have to give up like a lot of birds in hand to go elsewhere. You've got these handcuffs on. So by having the handcuffs removed and be given a soft landing, I kind of feel like it's a paid sabbatical for a lot of people. Now, I get it that there's a lot of people who've been laid off in other companies or in other circumstances where they weren't given that really soft landing. But still, basically, it gives you permission to take some more risks. I was coaching a client the other day, and she was like, oh, I'm looking at this offer or that offer. And one offer was a company that I could tell, and I think she knew she would not like. But it was a very famous, highly respected company. And I was like, well, look, if you go there, like it's an iconic company, but it's kind of known for chewing people up and you're not going to have much of a life. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And then weeks later, that company did a new round of layoffs and that offer was pulled. And everyone like was relieved. And I was like, honestly, I think this is the best thing that ever happened to you because I had a feeling like you wouldn't be able to say no to that company and you would have made some big sacrifices. And so sometimes like the universe kind of gives you opportunities and they don't look like opportunities, but they are. And so what I've done so I left in November of 23. So what I've done is I've said, wow, I've got the first time in 20 years that I haven't been in back-to-back meetings and I can do anything. And so in January, I went on a plane and went to New Hampshire and worked on a presidential primary campaign for a few weeks on an advanced team, which was like nothing else I've done before. Recently, I've started teaching a bunch of PM classes. I've made a bunch of angel investments, and now I'm kind of incubating a potential area that I might start a company around. Mm-hmm. So what I tell people when they ask me for advice about being in between jobs is like, this is a gap year. You're not going to get one again for a while. Like, take full advantage of it. It could be professional, it could be personal, it could be like climb, some mountain that you've never climbed before, or travel to some place that you've never been before, or learn a new language. This is really kind of a gift, and it's a privilege if you can do it. Now, I get it. Not everyone. Some people have to get back to work right away, and for those folks, like I know it is tough, but I can also say I saw the 2000.com crash. I saw the 2008 global financial meltdown. And the 2023 layoffs, it'll pass just like all the others have.
Yeah. Regardless of your situation, I do like the perspective that this can be an opportunity. right? I feel like God is knitting together activities in my life, and I sometimes don't understand why. But that notion of when one door is closed, another one opens, I believe that to be at least true in my experiences through life, right? And
Yeah.
that there are opportunities in that. As you do PM coaching, and you have for a long time now, I don't know if you have insights into this. I'm not close enough to hiring anymore to know how things are really working, right? All my experiences and most of the people that I know, they're finding or have found jobs through personal network, right? It's like someone they've worked with knows them and those opportunities. What are you talking with PMs about as far as ones that are looking for a job, looking for something new?
Okay, so right now is an extremely imbalanced time of massive surge of very capable talent on the market and very few new roles being opened up. So I'll give you an example. As part of my incubation efforts for a potential new venture, I put out something on LinkedIn and I said, hey, if someone out there wants to get some early PM experience and be a volunteer intern for me, I'm happy to get your help and you'll get some experience or whatever. And let me know. And I had a link to a posting. And this is an unpaid internship with a non-existent company, right? With some laid off Googler. And I got 400 applications. 400.
Wow.
And I remember in 2018, I did a similar post when I was at YouTube as a PM director at a very well-known business, saying, hey, if anybody wants to pitch in or whatever, I'm happy to give you some side projects and you can help me research things. And I got very few, like maybe 3 or 4 people reach out because they're like, well, it's not paid. I'm looking for a full-time thing. So this is just an example of how imbalanced the market is right now. So if you're a PM and you are in between jobs, yes, apply to many of them. Give it your best shot. But take advantage of this time and invest in your own self-development, learning, new experiences, because it's not going to be one of those situations where like, okay, well, I'll just apply to enough jobs and I'll find a new gig in the next month or two. Another data point is a few years ago, I would get recruiter emails like every other day. And now it's like once every 2 weeks. Order of magnitude kind of difference. And so, yeah, so what I've seen with people that I coach is they're not getting the offers. The hit rate is much lower. And part of the reason is that in a world where you have scarce headcount and you have so many applicants, it used to be that, okay, I'm going to look for really smart people, and then bonus if they've worked in this area before, and then I can they're a little more plug and play, and that'll be a tiebreaker. But now, if you're a hiring manager, you can say, I want super smart people who I have a connection to. I know someone or I've worked with them and they've worked in this area. They've done this exact same job and they're ready now and they have all the pedigree, blah, blah, blah. And they can basically say the wish list and actually find someone that meets 99 out of 100 of the checkboxes. And so it's no longer about, wow, if you're really smart and you can learn and you can roll up your sleeves, like people want to bet on talent. They do want to bet on talent, and they can ask for pretty much all the trimmings and get it.
It's
So
a changed
until that
environment
market so until that market, and it will, like every other market, the pendulum will swing back towards the middle. Until that time, like you can hope and try your best to find those needle in a haystack opportunities where you are the perfect fit. But in the meantime, please, I implore everyone, take full advantage of this, because you're going to look back 2 years from now and say like, man, I had an opportunity in 2024 to learn Spanish or to learn a new coding language or to start a side hustle or to write a book or whatever, like, or travel to 10 different countries. Like or spend more time or coach your kid's team, like that you're not going to be able to do next year.
Right. Right. It's a very good perspective. Think about what can you do with this time to improve yourself, to enjoy some of those things that maybe you have missed. Take advantage of not having back-to-back meetings scheduled all the time for you, and do something worthwhile with the time. So I like that perspective.
It reminds me of our last time I was on the show when we talked about you can't control the cards that you're dealt, but you can control how you play them.
Right.
Like, okay, if you got a pair of fours, like, you can only do so much. And, take advantage, take a breath. Like, if you're going to have to fold and wait out this hand, that's okay. Like, you can get up, go for a walk, get a cup of coffee. Like, this is a real gift. So for me, I'm very grateful that these sort of course of events happen, because I've probably done more in the last few months than I did in a long time in terms of personal development and my health and things like that.
Right. Yeah. It's a good opportunity. So what are you excited about now?
Oh my God. So I'm kind of taking a portfolio approach to 2024. A former colleague of mine who's a VP or was a VP, she described it as like, well, this is like kind of my gap year. And I was like, that's a good way to look at it. And so for my gap year, 1/3 of my time is coaching and teaching. 1/3 of my time is angel investing. And then 1/3 of my time is doing a lot of incubation of potential new ideas, which is mostly around confirming that there are big problems that are to be solved, which is a different approach to starting a company than I did in the past when I've started companies. In the past, I start out with a product idea and I try to validate it. This time I'm saying no, like, force yourself to spend several weeks only thinking about the customer problem. Don't go down the path of solutioning, even though, like, as product people, like, we can't help but want to do that. So that's how I'm spending my time, and it's been fun so far.
That's fantastic. With my professor hat on, teaching courses, and then I provide the professional development right through the training that I do for individuals and groups. And that key training is around the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery, right? So appreciate people checking that out. And again, that's productmasterynow.com/RPM is for that. And it really does prepare people to level up for the next stage of their career. And so at this time, we're doing personal and professional development. But what you just described hit me as the difference that I've talked about before about design thinking versus lean startup, right? Because the lean startup approach does take that, I have a product idea, let's find people with that problem and make a match here. Because at the surface level, they look very similar. But design thinking is, there's a group of people I want to serve. What kind of problems do they have? What can I do for those people? And I'm really curious about how this sounds like a big change for you, right? Of trying to pursue that.
Yeah.
And we're running a little bit late, but I would like some insights about how you got to that. What happened with this different thinking?
I started my first company in 2012. And that was kind of peak lean startup time. And actually, prior to that, I did a design thinking kind of boot camp at the Stanford G School as well. So I was familiar with a lot of interesting frameworks. And in 2024, as I look back on my startups, as well as projects that maybe didn't hit the expectations that I had even when I was at Google, I think there was one common theme and pattern, which was, you know what? Like, the thing that we built, it's not solving a big enough problem for the customer. And when people hear that, they're like, what? How? That's obvious. Like, well, it's not, because everything can be a problem. Like, you're smart, you're PM, you can rationalize yourself into almost any product and say, oh yeah, here's the problem. It's terrible. But is it really that terrible? Is it really that big of a problem? And maybe the other thing that people overlook is, even if it is a big problem, are the workarounds really that bad?
Right.
And if the workarounds are really that bad and the alternatives are that bad, is your solution really that much better, or is it like 20% better? Because if it's 20% better, like it's going to be tough. Like, and that's perhaps the most common thing that happens is like people don't ship flops. They just ship like milquetoast products that have beautiful UIs and beautiful roadmaps, but at the end of the day, customers don't, it's not a hair on fire solution for them. And so I've thought about this a lot, and I think part of the siren is that we as PMs tend to be creative people, solutions oriented, and action oriented. And what do we have? What levers can we pull? Well, we can ship stuff and we can iterate and learn, which is great. But if you're shipping and iterating in an area that doesn't need to be solved with a brand new offering, you're kind of like using very strong GPS positioning for trying to fish in like a lake that doesn't have any fish in it. So it doesn't matter that you know the depth and where the rocks are or where the current of the water. It doesn't matter.
You're still not going to find fish.
Yeah. No fish. So now I'm kind of zooming out at the kind of satellite level, seeing like, well, where are there a lot of fish that need to be harvested? And it's hard because we're wired to come up with solutions within a second of even seeing that drop of water.
It's true. And just to underscore that point, we are wired. My background's engineering. A lot of product managers come to it from a computer science engineering sort of perspective too. We see anything that sounds like a problem, we're on to the solution.
Yeah.
And we miss so much of what we need as product people. First, we have to understand the problem and the person, right? And that's the design thinking aspect of using empathy. Really, what is it like to walk in their shoes? What is it like for them to have this problem? And then we come up with better solutions when we deeply understand that.
Yeah. And I think it's hard because you have to kind of harness your enthusiasm and hold back a little bit. Like, so if you and I talked about a problem area, like my head immediately goes to, ooh, how might we solve this problem? And that's a great question. The first question is, why should we solve this problem? Does the world need yet another team working on some solution to this problem? Really? Because usually the answer is no. Yeah, the answer is like, we don't need a million new startups or a million new products. So figuring out which ones, where the world really needs it, and where your team's lined up to solve it, that's hard. It takes time, and it doesn't lend itself to instant gratification.
Right. Yeah, understanding the problem is very important for us. I'm glad we ended up on that point. That's a good one for product managers to take away and not rush into the solution. As we like innovation quotes around here, I asked you to bring one for us. I suspect this might tie into a few things here. What do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and compose it on the fly. Here's my quote. Product market fit is important, but before you think about product market fit, convince yourself that the world needs yet another solution to this problem. And that's my quote, because most projects get stuck by not answering that one sufficiently. And it can't just be a problem. Like the checklist it has to be a huge problem that people curse about, that their current alternatives really suck. And your solution has to be really a step change. It cannot be a slightly better mousetrap. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to create an AI powered CRM solution, it's like, wow, come on, man. Like that's an improvement over an existing thing. If you're saying, oh, because of AI, the way you do CRM is going to be completely disrupted, and it's not just accelerating existing workflows, okay, that's cool. But unless you work at a CRM company, I wouldn't start a new CRM product if it's just like, oh, we'll have a faster way to type emails. I don't know. I might be a little bit of a stingy angel on this one, but I just see too many kind of AI mousetraps out there. It's like, okay, That's good. Someone's going to do it. But why does the world need a brand new product? Why can't we just have the improved version of the incumbent?
Yeah, but we need to get excited about actual problems and not excited about things that we might be able to do that we don't know if there's a problem that we're solving or not.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, especially in 2024. It's so tempting to just fall in love with Gen AI, and it's just a tool. It's just a tool, the same way blockchain was, the same way mobile and social was, the same way cloud was. Like, the laws of economics aren't going to change. And if you can marry that tool with a giant problem, and it is truly 10x better than the alternatives, okay, right, you are probably onto something big.
You're onto something.
But yeah, but you got to check all the boxes. It can't just be like, oh, I found a problem and AI's hot.
Right. Okay. I like that quote very much. I like to focus on a person with the problem. And it sounds like you have some things you're pursuing that we might find out about in the future. So again, the things that you're interested in, you do PM coaching, I think probably primarily for executive product managers, senior leaders sort of roles. You're involved in a little bit of angel investing, and then you're pursuing some startup ideas and incubating them. How can people reach out to you, find out about what you're up to, kind of follow your work?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to follow me on LinkedIn, Tom Leung. My alias is Tom L. I also just started a Substack, and I've got a YouTube channel, and I just started teaching some classes on Maven, so that's been kind of fun on product management. So, but LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, and I'll share a variety of things on there.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure that is in the show notes. We'll try to find the other ones as well and put that in there. Tom, thanks so much for the opportunity to talk again. Really great insights from your experience throughout your career. And now this kind of transition, and it doesn't sound like sounds like you've enjoyed part of the gap year, but you're certainly very busy now working on what's next. So I appreciate you taking time to talk with us.
You bet. Thanks for having me back on, Chad.
And everyone, once again, you'll find resources, everything we talked about in a written summary, as well as that one-page action guide. That's at productmasterynow.com/496. Keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.